She said reunion. But I found her here. This St. Patrick's Day, I spent $150 on a green-themed dinner and decorations for a cozy evening at home. But guess what? I ended up eating corned beef and cabbage alone. Have you ever been left celebrating a holiday by yourself? But friends, the truth behind this evening is something I never saw coming. My name is Patrick. I'm 50 years old, living in Chicago, and I work as an office manager. My wife's name is not disclosed for censorship reasons, but her cat's name is Clover. Clover is a lazy tabby with a permanent scowl and a habit of knocking things off the counter whenever he feels ignored. St. Patrick's Day has always been a big deal in our house. Every year, I cook traditional Irish food, we put on our green outfits, and we enjoy a quiet dinner together at home. But this year was different. Around noon, my wife told me she had plans. "I'm meeting some old college friends downtown," she said. "It's been years since we all got together. I'll be home later tonight." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. I had already bought everything for dinner: the corned beef, the cabbage, the soda bread. But I didn't want to be the clingy husband who couldn't handle his wife having her own social life. "Have fun," I said. The day passed slowly. I cooked the dinner anyway, hoping she might come home early. But by 8 p.m., I was sitting alone at the dining table, staring at 2 untouched plates. That's when I noticed something odd. Her laptop was still open on the counter. Out of habit, I glanced at the screen. A calendar notification popped up. Reservation, the Clover Pub, 7:30 p.m. Table for 2. My stomach sank. She told me she was meeting college friends. Why would there be a reservation for 2? I grabbed my coat and keys. The Clover Pub wasn't far, a small upscale Irish bar tucked away in the corner of downtown. The pub was crowded, filled with people wearing green hats and clinking glasses of Guinness. I scanned the room, and then I saw her. She was sitting at a small corner table with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-dressed, with a confident smile. They were leaning in close, talking in hushed voices. "What would you have done in my place? Would you have walked straight up to the table? Or would you have waited in the shadows, watching?" I chose the latter. I found a seat at the bar where I could see them without being seen. They laughed, they toasted their drinks, and at one point, he reached across the table and brushed her hand. My chest felt tight. After about an hour, they stood up and left together. I followed them outside, staying far enough back not to be noticed. They walked down the street, side by side, until they reached a nearby parking garage. She turned to him and hugged him. Not a friendly hug, a long, lingering embrace. He whispered something in her ear, and she smiled. She got into her car and drove away, and he walked in the opposite direction. I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When she walked through the front door an hour later, she was carrying a small bag with a Shamrock logo on it. "Hey," she said casually. "You're still up. How were your college friends?" I asked. She froze for a second, but quickly recovered. "Oh, it was great. We caught up, had a few drinks, and laughed about old memories." I stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "You weren't with your friends," I said quietly. Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I pulled the calendar notification up on my phone and showed her the reservation. The Clover Pub table for 2. Who was he? She looked down at the floor, her shoulders slumping. The man was an old co-worker. They had reconnected recently, and she had been meeting him under the pretense of college reunions. She insisted it was just friendly, that nothing physical had happened. But does that even matter? Emotional betrayal feels just as sharp as physical. We talked for hours that night. There were tears, anger, and long silences. She swore she would end all contact with him, that she was ashamed of herself. But trust is fragile. Once it breaks, even if you try to repair it, the cracks are still visible. In the weeks that followed, we tried counseling. Some days felt hopeful, others felt like we were walking on glass. Clover, oblivious to it all, continued his routine of knocking cups off tables and staring at me like I was the villain in his story. St. Patrick's Day is supposed to be about luck, love, and celebration. But sometimes, it reveals truths you wish had stayed hidden. So tell me, Have you ever uncovered something you wish you hadn't? Because I certainly have. And if you've made it this far, drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We all mess up sometimes, right? I want to share with you one more interesting story from my life. My wife's best friend, Sabrina, a real estate agent earning $700,000 a year, has a way of turning casual evenings into something uncomfortable. Isn't it strange how $700,000 seems to come with a certain confidence? Do you think wealth gives people a sense of entitlement? It all started when my wife suggested a movie night at our house. Sabrina's bringing snacks, and we'll pick a fun movie. It'll be cozy, she said. That Friday evening, Sabrina arrived with a bag full of expensive snacks, a bottle of wine, and wearing an outfit that looked more suitable for a cocktail party than a casual movie night. Well, aren't we lucky? A private movie night with two of my favorite people, she said, flashing her flawless smile. We set up the living room with blankets, dimmed the lights, and started the movie. I sat in my usual spot on the recliner while my wife and Sabrina shared the couch. But about 20 minutes in, my wife got up to answer a phone call from her mom. Sabrina turned to me, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the TV screen. You know, you're really good at picking movies. I don't usually sit still for this long, she said, smiling. I chuckled awkwardly. Well, glad you're enjoying it. She stretched out across the couch, adjusting herself so that her legs were propped up and facing me. Hope you don't mind me getting comfortable, she said casually. Would you have ignored that? Or would you have felt the same knot in your stomach that I did? When my wife returned, Sabrina acted completely normal, laughing at the jokes in the movie and munching on popcorn. But halfway through, my wife said she was getting sleepy. You two keep watching. I'm heading to bed, she said, yawning. I felt trapped. The second my wife went upstairs, Sabrina shifted her position again, leaning back and glancing at me. You know, you're different from most guys. There's something calm about you. It's kind of refreshing, she said softly. I focused on the screen, pretending not to hear her. But then she said something that made my stomach drop. If I were your wife, I'd never leave you alone down here. I froze. Would you have confronted her? Or would you have let the awkward silence fill the room? I stood up, muttering something about needing water, and walked into the kitchen. I stayed there longer than necessary, hoping Sabrina would take the hint and head home. But when I returned, she was still there, lounging on the couch and scrolling through her phone. Don't be so shy, she said with a sly smile. We're just two friends watching a movie. When the credits finally rolled, I let out a breath of relief. Well, it's late, I said. I should probably head upstairs. Sabrina stood up, walking toward the door. But as she reached for her purse, she turned back to me. You know, if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who really listens, you can always call me. She walked out the door, leaving me standing there in stunned silence. The next morning, I told my wife about it. Sabrina said some things last night that felt off, I said carefully. She frowned. Oh, come on. Sabrina flirts with everyone. That's just how she is. There it was again, that excuse. But is it harmless? Is it just her personality when her words feel intentional, her glances linger, and her tone carries meaning? Since that night, I've avoided being left alone with Sabrina. I can't shake the feeling that one day, she might push things even further. So tell me, have you ever had your wife's best friend blur the lines of friendship? Because I certainly have. And if you've made it this far, drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Subscribe to hear new interesting stories and find out how much money women spend.